Chair, members, you're familiar with the issues in this bill. The legislature has been grappling with these things for a long time, and families have been grappling with these things. What happens when someone is, let's say, in a hospital and they have a serious condition, and the physician determines that continued life-sustaining treatment is inappropriate. Under Section 166.046 of the Health and Safety Code, under current Texas law, if that happens, your loved one is in a hospital, and the physician determines that life-sustaining treatment, and that's defined in statute, is inappropriate. And that term is not defined in statute. If the doc decides it's time to withdraw life-sustaining treatment, you can go to the Hospital Ethics Committee, and if the Hospital Ethics Committee agrees with the physician that continued life-sustaining treatment is inappropriate, then you have 10 days to find a new hospital, new doctor, or they can pull the plug. Now, we want to make it clear, most hospitals, most doctors are not aggressively using this system. We're very thankful for that. Most hospitals, most doctors are coming alongside their patients and their families. They're listening, they're working with them, and they're serving them. They're giving wonderful care. We have to admit, though, that in Texas, under this law, there are cases, in fact, I think everyone in this committee has had at least a case or two in their district, and not all that long ago, that we know about, where this has happened and where a doctor and a hospital ultimately impose their value judgments, their decision about quality of life on patients and on families. And Texas law allows this. So for a long time, the legislature has grappled with this, trying to come up with some accommodation. This goes way back, and I won't bore you with the whole story. You're familiar with it, but in 1999, the legislature passed a law that put this system in place. And the thinking at the time was, we recognize that the physician and the hospital have a right to practice medicine as they see fit, according to their conscience. We don't generally want to compel a hospital or a physician to give care they think is inappropriate. On the other hand, we also recognize the patient has a right to life, right? It's up to the patient to determine, do I want to live in this condition? And so how do we balance those two? So the system was put in place that said, when the patient wants to live and the hospital is ready to withdraw treatment, well, let's transfer somewhere else. And so the decision was made, let's give them 10 days to find a transferee facility. Now, experience has taught us, if we've learned anything based on the scores of families we've heard from, I think we've learned that 10 days is not long enough for that transfer to take place. Now, in these cases that we know about, when there's a disagreement between what the patient and family want and what the hospital and doctor want, when there's a conflict, when the hospital and the doctor work with the family and help give the patient treatment, normally they can find a place to transfer the patient. It doesn't happen in 10 days. Now, we often hear what happens about the patient that just lingers on in sometimes we hear the term a persistent vegetative state. The facts have taught us that in these cases, most of these patients will pass away of natural causes at some point. But you should know this. 166.046 of the Health and Safety Code does not limit this process to terminal patients. There's been sworn testimony before this committee and before the House of patients who were cognizant, who were able to speak. One lady who was able to write, "No, I want to live," and gave that to her loved one right before they began to withdraw treatment from her. So these are rare, but there are cases in Texas where patients who are not terminal and who are who do not want treatment withdrawn have had this done to them. So the law needs to be fixed, and we as a legislature have been grappling with how to get it done. We've had a bill pass the House, but not the Senate, pass the Senate, but not the House. This committee, the State Affairs Committee, committees in the House have grappled with it, and so here we are. And so last session, you may recall the Senate considered a similar bill, and near the end of the session, and Senator Miles, you remember that well, and again, we've each had constituents affected by this, and hospitals, great hospitals, that give our constituents great care. This is a tough issue, but we've had these situations, and so the bill before you would do this. it would say that when we have that situation where the patient or the patient's family want to continue treatment, and that can be the patient or the patient speaking through an advance directive, or the patient who has said, I'm designating my daughter X, my son Y, to make decisions for me, right? In that case, when the person who's speaking for the patient or the patient wants to continue treatment, but the hospital doctor does not, then what do we do? How do we resolve that? This bill would say that we would require the hospital and doctor to continue life-sustaining treatment, not heroic treatment, but life-sustaining treatment while the family is actively seeking a transferee facility. So the family couldn't just sit on their hands and wait around, but nor could the hospital not help with the patient's care. So this bill would say, when we have this conflict, patient wants to live, family wants them to live, hospital and doctor don't think that's appropriate. And I'm not demonizing the hospital or doctor, but when that happens, this bill provides a mechanism that says, hospital, doctor, you continue that treatment, life-sustaining treatment, as long as the family is actively seeking a transferee facility. And evidence has shown when that happens, when interest groups get involved and when the hospital helps with the treatment, they can find a place to go. Now, I should update you with one case, and I'm going to shut up, and I thank you for indulging me on this long layout. Many of us heard about the Tinsley case. Baby Tinsley went all the way to the Texas Supreme Court. And I'm going to read you a couple things. The Tinsley case involved a great hospital in Fort Worth that does wonderful care. We're not beating them up. We like this hospital, and they have a great history. Tinsley Lewis, a baby, and a similar situation where the mother wants to continue treatment, but the physicians in the hospital have determined that continued care is inappropriate. So under 166.046, they move to withdraw treatment. The family objects. It goes to court. It goes to the appellate court, and they rule against the hospital. The Texas Supreme Court agrees with that, and I'm going to read you a couple of things, and you may hear more about this today, and then I'm going to shut up. But the court said this, I'm quoting, when a terminally ill patient or her surrogate decision maker, and I'm going to read this parenthetical, especially a parent of a minor patient with her own individual liberty interest, when they actively oppose the withdrawal of life-sustaining treatment, the right to life is clearly implicated. I think we all know that, but the Texas courts have held the same thing. The Texas courts have also held that when a hospital and a doctor acting under 166.046, when they move to withdraw life-sustaining treatment, they are state actors because they're acting under color of state law. We understand what that means. The court said that this committee review process that they use under the statute violates due process. And finally, they said Section 166.046 sub E unquestionably trumps the patient's or surrogate decision maker's decision to continue living for whatever additional amount of time she may have before the natural disease process overcomes the life-sustaining treatment. I think the court said it very well. We're thankful for physicians and doctors. They're gifted, they're caring, they do so much. We've been reminded this last year of how important they are to us. And families need their help. We need good doctors and good healthcare professionals, good hospitals. But I hope we can all agree, ultimately, when it's a question of quality of life, when it's a question of, is this life worth living? Do I want to live like this? That's a decision for the patient and for the family, not for the doctor or the hospital or anyone else. That's what this bill's about. And I humbly offer it to you and yield for your questions.